Alright, welcome to another episode of Inspired Content. This is another gaming week, and this week we're doing something rather old as a game. It's a game played in ancient Egypt, so when I say old, I mean really old. The game is called Senet. S-E-N-E-T, not the governmental body. I'll take a look at this and then come up with some ideas for how you can carry the themes or ideas further. So I'll see you on the other side of that.
4 two-sided dice, I guess would be what they call them. They're essentially sticks that are black on one side and white on the other, and you toss them, and depending on the combination, you get your choices of movement. Now, the rules I've seen suggest that, white, the number of white sides up count as that number of movements. So 1 white side would be 1 movement, 2 white sides would be 2, 3 would be 3, 4 would be 4. But because you're using 4 two-sided, it's also possible to have 4 black sides come up, and they use that as a 6 space movement. And so there is no 5, but it's a total of 5 types of movement, 1 through 4, and then 6. And so for those 5 movements, I'm going to be using a 10-sided die that I haven't, well, it's a double 10-sided die, but I'll be using the 10-sided die, and we'll go with that for now. And then the board is pretty simple. The board is
and the rules state that players alternate throwing the dice until one throws a 1. This player has the black playing pieces and moves the piece on square 10 to square 11. After the first move, the player continues to throw the dice. If he throws a 1, 4, or a 6, which would be all sides black, he moves any of his pieces the indicated number of squares along the game track and throws again. If he throws a 2 or a 3, he moves the piece the indicated number of squares, and the turn passes to his opponent. The second player must make his first move from square 9, but with subsequent throws of the dice may move any of the playing pieces. Each turn ends with a throw of 2 or 3. Alright, and the objective of the game seems to be to get all of your pieces down into the bottom row, where they are. Once you have all your pieces in that bottom row, you can start moving them off the board through these last 5 spaces. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. These last 5 spaces are marked with symbols. And this one's empty. The spaces are marked as follows. This one, and this one, and this one are all safe spaces. If you have one of your players landed on it, nobody can take that piece in an attack. But this space is a trap, and if your piece lands on that piece, it has to move back to the beginning, but if any of these spaces are occupied, it moves to the first available empty space. So if this one landed here, it would move all the way back to the beginning, but because these are all occupied, it would have to move into that spot. But if this one were empty, it would move here, and likewise, any of these were empty, it would take that spot. And then, so you roll the first player would roll that one, and he'd take a 1, so they would take that color, and roll again. Got a 4, and so a silver moves 4 spaces. You cannot land on an occupied space except for if a piece lands on a square occupied by an opposing piece. So if I were to, say, instead have rolled a 3, a 3, there you go, I would move 1, 2, 3. As I land here, I attack this piece, and this piece, in response to the attack, moves to the space I just vacated. Okay, and this is important here to take note that any 2 of any pair make a protected pair, so nobody can attack either of those protected pieces, but any 3 form a blockade. So not only are they protected from being attacked, but they cannot be bypassed by any pieces except for pieces of their own color.
There's an additional rule that says any dice throw that cannot be used to make a forward move must be used to make a backward move. So if you cannot move your piece, any of your pieces, the number you have rolled, then, and that's not the case in this situation, but you would have to move backwards along the course into the empty spaces. So if you had you would have to move spaces backward along the course if you couldn't move forward because of a blockade or something. If no move can be made at all in either direction, your turn is forfeit. When you get to the end of the board, these are safe spaces, and nobody can attack you when you're on those spaces and force you back to the front of the board. But your goal is to land exactly on this last space, and it allows you to move your pieces off. But you can only do that when all of your pieces are in this back row. When you have everything of your pieces in this row, then and only then, when you land on this space, can you jump off. If at any time one of your pieces gets jumped back to the beginning, you no longer get to be able to walk them off the board until you get that one back into this row.
Alright, Senet. It's a very simple, straightforward game with a little bit of a twist in the strategy and planning on your moves, because you can certainly impede another player's ability to make any progress until you've aligned your pips in a row, I guess, gotten yourself into a better position to proceed forward. I would say it certainly lacks a fair amount of excitement for me in my gameplay, but I would give it maybe a 5.6 out of a 7.4. It's not bad, not great. But as like a foundation idea for some things going forward, I think it has some potential. So, looking at those. Okay, one of the first things that comes to my mind is Dante's Inferno. Well, Inferno, Purgatory, and Paradiso. I think they all sort of suit this same style of storytelling. It's really just a race game with points you pass along the way, and I think you can kind of do that similar thing with this type of game. And I don't know if you could throw in an element of truth or dare kind of to the game, but my inclination says it needs something a little bit more than just roll of the dice and progress as quickly as you can through the course. Another mythological story realm that might be interesting to pursue would be the Norse 9 realms. And so the board would be different than this. You would be more of an expanded set of paths, and you start in one realm and you try to progress your way through the 9 to get to wherever you're supposed to end up. I don't imagine it would be the realm of the Norse gods, unless you're competing for the rights to join the gods in the realm. But I do think the theme of the 9 realms and a challenge to overcome in each, if you happen to fall on that trap in that realm, you try to adventure through it without encountering anything, but if you land on one of them, can you beat the odds on that one, or do you get sent back and have to go back through it again? Another mythological theme that would be kind of interesting to explore, I think, would be the labors of Hercules, or Heracles. The thing I think that I would include in a game like that would be the fact that originally he was only doing a certain number of tasks, but the king who gave him each task denied him the right to claim 2 of them because he had help doing them, so he had to do another 2. So I think it would be a fun little quirk to add in a moment where the only way to proceed forward in the game was if you cooperated with your opponent to get through that part of it. And that would then allow you to proceed to the end of the game. A variant on this that strikes me as a potential is, right now you start off with 5 equal value tokens, and part of me says one of them should be the pharaoh and the other be loyal subjects, and the goal is to get the pharaoh to the end point, and if you have like more than one way to win by the end of the game, where it becomes important to note how many of your loyal subjects you were able to bring through with you on the last turn or 2. And the point values for those are points towards your afterlife. Each of the 5 tokens you have could represent one of 5 elements. And the 5 spaces at the end of the board could each be one of 5 elements. And the goal is to be the first one to get all of your tokens on their corresponding endpoint. All the other rules being the same as with Senet. This one seems like something I'm going to have to dabble with some more. But I'm calling it the game of reincarnation. Because I like the idea that the spots at the end, the 5 spaces, one being blank and the others having symbols, I like the idea of the first 4 of them being representations of different sort of levels of reincarnation. A dog becomes a human, but if you land on the dog reincarnation the next turn around, you're going back down. So planning and organizing how you land is an important strategy to playing. But the last empty space would be the nirvana spot, where you finally escape the cycles. And each time you land on one, you go back to the front, except for nirvana. So I do think that would be... I think I would change the board shape. I kind of like the idea of doing something a little bit different with that. Being a little more cyclical on that. But, alright, so those are the 6 ideas I had for this game. Hope there was some inspiration in there for you, and I'll see you next time.